This episode of The Answer is Yes Baja Sessions is brought to you by Baja Bound Insurance Services. Driving to Mexico? You can buy and print out your Mexican auto insurance policy online in minutes with their easy-to-use website. They also have great travel information to help you plan your trip south of the border. Visit bajabound.com.
Hello, this is Ryan Thomas, and you're listening to the Baja Sessions. Over the last 3 decades, I've lived, worked, and played from the top to the tip of the majestic peninsula of Baja California. And because of this, I've met some incredibly interesting people with equally interesting stories. And today on the Baja Sessions, we're going to chat with one of them.
Over 30 years ago, Englishman Graham Mackintosh fell in love with Baja California on a day trip to Ensenada from San Diego. Not long after that first visit, and despite a glaring shortage of both experience and money, Mackintosh, who described himself as the least adventurous person in the world, set out to walk around the beautiful but dangerous coastline of Mexico's Baja California Peninsula. The near 2-year and 3,000-mile trip changed his life. When Mackintosh emerged from the cactus-strewn wilderness, he returned to England to write Into a Desert Place, and there received the prestigious Adventurous Traveller of the Year award. But he could not stay away. Over the following 3 decades, he's returned to Baja multiple times and has completed several astonishing treks with a few furry friends in tow. In total, he's written 4 books that chronicle these adventures and is currently working on a 5th. Graham, how you doing today? I'm so glad to have you on the podcast and looking forward to diving into some conversation about your exploits in Baja.
Well, I'm doing really good. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you.
So I'm fascinated by the bits and pieces that I've been able to put together reading about you. And I'm going to confess to the listeners that we are going to explore this new relationship with Graham together. I don't know much, and so we're gonna peel the layers back and learn a little bit about this fascinating gentleman who's on the phone with me today. And you're calling me from, you said south of Tijuana, north of Ensenada, so Rosarito. Give us a little background about where you're at right this minute.
Well, I'm about 20 miles north of Ensenada in a place called La Misión, and it's real convenient to cross the border and to head down to Baja. It's a perfect place, and I've rented here so I can have a base to write my 5th Baja book, which will be about kayaking to La Paz.
Kayaking to La Paz from?
From the northern Sea of Cortez near Bahia Gonzaga.
Uh-huh. Wonderful. And you're, from what I can understand, well known for an additional or an earlier trip that you did on foot. Is that kind of the claim to fame for Graham? Yeah,
I think the classic that I did, the trip was in the 80s, 1983 to 1985. And I walked pretty much around the coast of Baja, everywhere south of Ensenada and everywhere south of San Felipe. And I did that walk, surviving off the sea in the desert. Took me almost 2 years. Went through 7 pairs of boots. I was very lucky to survive it, and it was quite amazing to me. I went back to England, where I'm from, and I won the Adventurous Traveller of the Year award for that. I think
you should have won the Adventurer Travel of the Century for that.
No, it was. I was very lucky. Everybody I met looked after me. The hospitality was great. And even though I'd go maybe a week without seeing anybody, and I'm surviving with my stills and fishing or whatever, every so often I would have such wonderful people that I met. I'd be dining on lobsters, and of course the Mexicans, the Baja Californians have a terrific sense of hospitality, and they wouldn't take any money. They'd feed me, look after me, and that was an unexpected part of the trip that I was really glad to write about, because I was really surprised by their generosity and kindness.
So we've started off with a bang here, and I think we've skipped some important backstory to this. So again, this is Graham Mackintosh, and Graham is well known for semi-circumnavigating the peninsula. Like you said, you started, it sounds as if south of Ensenada a bit, and got as far up or around from the Sea of Cortez side as San Felipe. But as I noted prior to pressing the record button here, you've got a bit of an accent that's not North American, and it doesn't have a Latin flair. You are from England, and so
right.
let's back up a little bit. And we didn't do this prior to starting this podcast, so I'm going to explore this with you. That was back in the 80s, and sometime prior to that, you got inspired, got a wild hair up your butt, whatever we want to call it, to go on a walk. How in the world did you get to that place in life?
Well, I've always been a couch potato, or I had been when I was in England. My life revolved around the pub and television and work. And I hadn't even left England until I was probably 30. I say England, I mean Scotland, Ireland, and the British Isles. I hadn't left them until I came to the United States and discovered Baja. And I just remember to this day, I was sitting on top of a mountain looking at the amazing Sea of Cortez, the emptiness of it. And I had a vision that I was going to write a book about walking around Baja. And it made absolutely no sense because I didn't walk anywhere that I could avoid. And I had no experience, no backpacking. I couldn't speak Spanish. I had every disqualification you can imagine. So I tried to ignore that voice, but I couldn't. I just went back to England, and after a couple of years of working and traffic and thinking, what am I doing here? I'm going to walk around Baja. I don't care if it kills me. This is what I'm meant to do. I'm going to write a book about it or die trying. And it sounds pretty incredible, but that's really how it started.
So the thing that is catching me, though, is that at age 30, you self-defined yourself as a couch potato, television, work, and sleep. And then by 30, you have this vision, or you found yourself in Mexico. So you went from couch potato to Mexico to then have the vision. How'd you get to Mexico, and why?
Well, I was visiting friends in California, and I'd read a book about some people who tried to row across the Atlantic, an English couple, the Pacific, and they rowed to Australia from, I think it was Los Angeles. But I remember they were forced into the port of Ensenada, and at the time it meant nothing to me, but I never quite forgot the description of Ensenada that was in that book. And when I was that close to it, I said goodbye to my friends, and I decided I'm going to run to Ensenada and spend my birthday in this town or city, whatever it was. And when I got to
Graham,
Ensenada,
I got to interrupt you because when normal people say run to Ensenada, I just assume they mean like take a quick trip down to Ensenada in a car. So I got to clarify, when you say run to Ensenada, did you really mean run, or were you going in a car at this point?
Well, I didn't have a car, but I came down in a bus.
Okay.
And at that point, something took over me, and I thought, I love this town. I love these people, this place, and this is a real eye-opener. And I ended up hitching down. I looked at the map and saw there was a highway, and I hitched down the highway in 1979, I believe it was. And I hitched all the way to Cabo, and I had the most amazing experiences coming down. And that's when I had my vision that I was going to walk around this place. And it just, one thing led to another. I didn't mean to do this. I went back, tried to be a couch potato again, but something had been turned on, and I thought, why can't I do this? You know, I'm only 5'6". I hated sport at school. I was never athletic. I had no experience of backpacking or anything, but I thought I can do this. If anybody can do it, I can do it, because I'm totally disqualified for this.
I have to tell you that I'm vicariously wanting to live through your experiences right now, and looking forward now to kind of dive into that. But I'm married, have been for almost 20 years. I have a almost 6-year-old son, and you and I have not shared much with each other. But I lived in southern Baja for a decade. I've been very fortunate to been able to piece together opportunities and travel the world surfing, and also involved in motorsports. But I have the wanderlust that it appears you got when you were around the age 30. I've had it from about age 13 or 14, and I still have it, but I'm somewhat domesticated now. So in fact, I'm trying to convince my wife to get on a sailboat and sail around the world, or get in a Sprinter van and go travel around the United States for a year in a van, which will probably be to no avail. But you were able to pull this off. So let's keep moving forward here. You made the trip to the United States. We're curious about Ensenada, bust and hitchhiked into Ensenada, and then somehow found yourself all the way down in Cabo. And then you go back to England, and you're there. You're realizing, hey, I'm back in this couch potato life, and it's not for me. And then what happens?
Well, I actually came back to Baja a year later with a girlfriend. I was going to get married. And we traveled up and down Baja, and I was trying to convince her to come with me, and we'll write this book. And she thought I was totally crazy and ditched me as quick as she could. And so I did it alone. But that was part of the story. It's all in detail in my first book, Into a Desert Place. But I just was determined to walk around Baja. It was totally crazy. I couldn't convince anybody it made any sense. And I thought, well, the only way I'm going to do this is alone. And just living off the sea in the desert, totally independent, no GPSs, none of that stuff, and see how it goes. Well, it went for nearly 2 years. I didn't think it would take nearly that long, but once I got into it, I really didn't want it to end. I thought this is paradise down here, in spite of what I was going through.
So let's go through some of the early elements of preparation for this. So you've mentioned now twice living off the sea and off the land. Was that always your intention? Did you always think, okay, I'm going to have to figure out how to survive with what's around me? Or did you at some point think you were going to carry food with you? Or did you? Like, tell me some of the what you were planning or thinking or envisioning when you started, but what actually played out. Were they the same? Did they align, or was there rude awakenings once you got going?
Well, I was pretty convinced that I could, if I was by the sea, I was relatively safe, because the biggest problem was making drinking water from the sea.
Right.
And I had 3 stills to do that. So I in my mind, I thought, it's going to be very difficult for me to kill myself here. I didn't realize it was very easy to kill yourself. But, because sometimes your stills don't work or you damage them. Sometimes unexpected things happen, like rattlesnakes, or once I was hitching a ride after re-equipping and got involved in an accident. It just seemed like one thing after another that I hadn't thought about and hadn't prepared for. But what I was prepared for, I thought, if I'm by the coast, I'm safe. Well, ironically, what nearly killed me on that trip was having to leave the coast because of sheer cliffs and going inland. And then, of course, without a GPS or anything, you're totally lost. You're in canyons, 10 miles inland before you know it, and your life expectancy, you got no water, you can't use your stills. Your life expectancy is probably 24 hours if you don't get back to the coast. So it was pretty scary, and a couple of times I came closer than I wanted to.
So you said this was in the 80s when you left, so that was pre-GPS, pre-cell phones. Had you done a bunch of geographical research to kind of plot out a route, or did you just walk out to the coast and start heading south?
Well, I thought, I'm right by the coast. The coast is my route, and All I had was the AAA road map, and all I needed to know was where's the next town, where's the next village, if there is one. And the map was all I carried. And once you're on the coast, you just keep going south.